Top Republicans are questioning whether he has the authority to revamp the nation's immigration rules and whether he can sidestep lawmakers. Let's talk about it. We've got CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona.
Also joining us, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Kevin Madden. Thanks to both of you for being here. Let's talk about the ramifications for 2016. Good morning to you. Maria, does either party, do you think, stand to gain an advantage from the showdowns that we're seeing?
Well, I think that all depends on how Republicans respond to this. And what we're hearing so far really doesn't make me think that they're going to have any advantage going into 2016 with all of their talk of shutdowns and impeachment and removing the protections that now President Obama has given more than 5 million immigrants from deportation without talking about solutions. So if you think about it this way, going into 2016, you have the Democratic Party and this president who has now given Latino voters protection in terms of health care. 10 million Latinos can get health care under the ACA. Republicans want to repeal that. Now you have this executive action which protects probably 4 million Latinos who are probably 70 or 75% of the immigrant population in this country. And you have Republicans talking about wanting to repeal that. So going into 2016, you have a Republican Party that is gambling on the perception of their party within the Latino community, which it's not great now. I don't think that's a gamble that Republicans will win if they don't change the way that they're moving forward with this.
Yeah. Well, look, Maria makes a point that, Republicans do have a demographic problem. We can't continue to win presidential elections if we continue to reduce our ability to win a good size of the Latino vote in presidential elections. But I think there's also a risk here for Democrats. I think particularly President Obama right now, in that this is an overreach on his end, too. The American people did want to see a legislative solution to this. They do want to see parties come together. And I think after an election where the American people sent a message that they wanted Washington to work together, for the president to take such a provocative act and drive the parties back into their polar opposites, that is something that is going to be looked pretty harshly on by the American public.
Maria, to that end, I want you to listen to, both of you, to listen to President Obama talking about the possibility of postponing deportations and the notion that he can do that in his own words over the last few years. Let's listen.
With respect to the notion that I can just suspend deportations through executive order, that's just not the case.
I can't do it by myself. We're going to have to change laws in Congress.
The notion that somehow, by myself, I can go and do these things is just not true.
What I've said is that there's a path to get this done, and that's through Congress. I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed.
2011, with respect to the notion that I can just suspend deportation through executive order, that's just not the case. 2013, my job is to execute laws that are passed. Who's right, Maria? 2011 President Obama, 2013 President Obama, or the President Obama who just signed these two executive actions?
Victor, they're all right. I don't think any of those are inconsistent with what he said when he announced the executive action. Let's be very clear. He was answering questions from people who said, why don't you just suspend deportations for the 11 million immigrants that are in this country and give them what they would have gotten under the Senate bill? He still can't do that, which is why he has said that this is a very temporary fix and that ultimately what he prefers and what he has always preferred has been for Congress to take this up because that is the permanent, real solution to this. And when you look at the American people, and Kevin's right, there is a risk here, which is why you see the president and the cabinet going out to sell this aggressively about why the president is doing this. In polls, you see that, yes, the American people would rather Congress work together, so would the president. But when you ask, in the absence of any action from Congress, do they support the president giving some temporary relief to immigrants who have been here for many, many years, have kids here, have roots here? The numbers go way up. So again, it's a risk for Republicans in terms of how they respond to this moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that's why this is such so odd, and also an odd act, and also I think a very divisive act on the president's half, because we did have this brief glimmer of bipartisanship after the recent election results, where the president, obviously his leadership was repudiated, and Republicans in both the House and Senate saw gains because they went to the American people and said, look, we want to make Washington work. And at that very time, there was a brief glimmer where the president could have worked with Capitol Hill to possibly work some comprehensive legislation together.
But the House has a bill, Kevin, that they can consider.
Right.
There's a bill that the Senate passed more than 500 days ago, and if it were to come to the floor, it would pass. So why not bring it to the floor?
Because John Boehner has said that if we are going to have a piece of legislation that is going to work, that we do have to rally a larger group of American public support behind it, and that there were many Republicans in the House. There were many Republicans in the House that preferred that we have a piece by piece. A piece-by-piece legislation that focuses on securing the border first, then moving to pieces of bills that
But they
address
never
the
brought
naturalization
anything
process.
up, Kevin. They never focused on any piecemeal.
Right.
They never presented any piece of the meal. So
we don't have a process. We don't have a process of democracy here, where when the president doesn't get what he wants out of one chamber, that he then acts unilaterally.
But that doesn't give the House Republicans the right then to say, well, he didn't do anything. If he does this, it's an overreach. You have something you can do. Isn't that the obvious power move here? Pass a bill, as the president says. If you want to negate what the president has signed, you've got something to consider.
But Victor, I would argue that that's not the process that we have, which is that the president makes an executive order by fiat, and then we have a legislative process designed to either remedy or counter that. Instead, we have a process that says the House and Senate work, and that the president also works hand in glove to make sure that that legislation is something that when he gets to his desk, it will find. But
it hasn't worked.
But that's the process,
like
Maria. If things don't work up on Capitol Hill, the president just can't act.
Okay,
that's
so
that's why he said,
Kevin.
Maria. That's why he said that, Maria. That is why the president said time and time again, I am not an emperor. I can't just do this. I can't just ignore the law.
And he still believes that. He hasn't changed the law. He has given very temporary relief to a small amount of the undocumented population that is in this country. Congress can still act right after Thanksgiving, Kevin. If Boehner wants to bring the bill to a vote, let's do it. And if not that bill, then present other bills that could fix this.
We've got to call it there. Maria Cardona, Kevin Madden. Never enough time for these conversations. I thank you both for being with us this morning.